Hi, I'm Ed, the owner and craftsman of Mini Wedding Wagons, and I'm going to show you the assembly of the wedding carriages. We also call them the pumpkin wagons or the wedding wagons. They are the small, medium, and large size. The assembly for all three of them is basically the same. The only difference is the size of the parts. This one is the medium wedding wagon. And so when you take it out of the box, you basically will have 7 parts and 4 wheels. You'll have the base, which we'll start with, and the 2 end rails. These would be the 2 end rails. Now in the instruction sheet, it's going to say that one of the end rails says rear, and the other says front with an arrow. Well, the rear, of course, is where the rear axle is. That's this end. And so we put the rear this way, these vertical posts on the inside, and you'll have a bag of hardware. It will have these stainless steel Phillips head pan head screws, each with a flat washer on it. Just push them in the holes. When we are putting the end rails on, underneath there's a T-nut that receives the threaded end. See, this is the T-nut, those silver. Each one of those is driven in. And if we put this on and put pressure on this, push down without holding the bottom, we can push the T-nut right out and then it won't work. So as you screw this in, I'm using the tool, but you can do it with a hand driver. But as you screw this in, have your finger underneath holding that T-nut so it doesn't drop out. This isn't a sharp screw, so it can't hurt you. See, I'm on each one of these, as I go in with it, I'm holding the T-nut, and then I tighten it up. If you do push down and the T-nut drops out, just tip it up on its side and just push it back in and tighten it in, and it'll just suck it right back in the same holes. That's important that you remember to hold those T-nuts. Same thing when you're doing it on the sides. As you put the screw in, just have a finger holding it and run the screw in just as you're putting gentle pressure on the inside of the T-nut so it doesn't pop out. The best tool to use to screw these in would be a long Phillips screwdriver, where the handle of the screwdriver goes up past the top, and then they screw in very nicely. When you screw them in, do not tighten them. Keep them loose. You can also use a short Phillips. It's just a little more awkward because the handle is bumping this, but it still works. Just work with what you've got. Again, don't tighten it all the way. Put them all in part ways. The reason we don't tighten one up is because once you tighten one up, you can't move it around. This way there's enough of play where all of them will get a good start, because you might have to shift it a little. And once they're all started, then you just snug them up. They don't have to be real tight. Just snug them up. And then you'll be doing the same on the other end. Now both ends are on. I take a block of wood. You can use whatever. You can use some books. If I set it like this and let go and touch it, it wants to fall. So I set this under here because there's not another leg to support this. That stabilizes it. Like I said, you can use some books. You'll notice this post says A and it has one X. On the other side, it has B with two X's. The reason for the X's that are punched in with a screwdriver is because if this gets painted and somebody paints over the letter, they don't know which goes where. The two X's match up with the side rail. The side rail also is going to have two X's or one X, an A or a B. So the two X's here go with the two X's here, and this lays right on here. The reason these sides are not interchangeable, you don't want to switch the A and the B, is that I custom fit these together. Each one that we make, we actually assemble it before we ship it. And I drill these holes to make sure everything's a perfect match. So there may be a slight difference in the exact positioning of these holes in relation to everything. So if you switch the sides A and B, it may go together, but it may give you trouble. So do make sure to put the 1X with the 1X and the 2X's with the 2X's. And again, we take a screwdriver. You can do this with a battery-operated screwdriver if you like. Just start it slightly. I like to use this tool. It's a whole lot faster. Don't tighten these up yet. Just get them started. And that way, all of them go in. If you tighten up one, the next one might jam. And you don't want these to jam and cross-thread, because it pretty well ruins them. Once they jam and cross-thread, about the only way to get them off is to cut them off, and it's a real headache. Okay, that side is done. Flip this over and put the block on this front corner. And then here again, I see the A here with the 1X matches the A here with 1X. Put the 4 screws in, like both sides are the same. And I just line up the two of them. You can do this by hand or with the driver. And once they're all started, tighten them up. There's the carriage. That's basically the assembly of the body. What you will also find is this piece. This is the front axle, what I call the front end tongue triangle. It will come with this bolt in it. Okay, you'll take this bolt off. You might have to use a wrench to loosen this, because I use what's called a locking nut. The nut has a special, some sort of nylon insert, which tightens on the thread so it does not vibrate loose. But we take that off. Now in the hardware bag, you will find this. It's a 3.5-inch hex head bolt with a bunch of washers on it. So you take the nut off, leave one washer on here, push it through from the top in this front hole, stand this on its side, then take the 3 larger washers. These are 3/8 flat washers. Slide them on as spacers in between. And then reaching through, holding this, you just slide this on with the spacers in between, just like that. And then you put the last washer on and the nut underneath. Tighten it up by hand. I'm using a 7/16 open end wrench and a 7/16 inch socket. You could use 2 open end wrenches. You can use adjustable wrenches, a vice grip. Pliers, it's a little difficult because they tend to slip off and pinch your fingers. I don't suggest pliers, but I'm going to use this open end wrench to hold the head so it doesn't turn, and I'll tighten with this ratchet. And see, as soon as I start tightening, it starts getting tight, but it's not tight, and that's because it is the locking nut. So I keep going. It feels a little tight, but it's easy to turn. I keep going until it really snugs up, not too tight. And you notice, okay, that turns nicely. It's not too tight, and there's no wobble. That's what you want. So that's snug, that won't vibrate off. Now I'll put this upside down for the last couple steps. You'll be taking the tongue out of the box. You'll notice it has this copper little C-clamp thing on it, and you line that up with these two. You have this upside down. You put this bolt that you took out, has one washer, slide it in, hold this up, slide it through that C-clamp. So now they're together with this through all three C-clamps. And you put the nut, put the washer and the nut back on this bolt. Again, using these tools. Now here, I don't really want to tighten this tight. I just bring it up against and stop. The locking nut feature keeps it from vibrating off. And its sole purpose is to hold these pieces together, but you don't need to make it tight in the sense of squashing it. I bring it to where it's just touching, just like that. It's touching, and this still freely moves and steers. Now the last step would be the four wheels that we just took out of the box, and these lags that you took out of the hardware bag. The lag comes with two large flat washers. You take one off, slide this through the wheel, one washer, slide it through the side that has no screws. That should be the outside. The inside has four screw heads that you see. That's the inside. It's not as pretty. And so I have a washer on the outside, a washer on the inside. To the rear, I'm putting the larger wheels, the 14-inch wheel on the rear. The small wagon, it's a 10 and 12. The 12-inch goes on the rear. The large carriage, it's a 14 and 16. The 16-inch goes on the rear. In this case, I'm putting the 14-inch on the rear. So I'm holding this, and I just start turning this lag. It's a pre-drilled hole, so it goes in fairly easy. This is a 9/16 socket. You can use a ratchet with a socket. You can use an open-end wrench. You could use a vice grip. Again, pliers is not a good idea because there's enough of resistance that pliers won't work well. But so as I do this, I'm wanting it to have a slight bit of drag. I can tell just tightening it. I don't want any, oh, there's still some to tighten here. You've got to use your eye because it feels tight and yet it's not yet. Okay. There it's turning with a little drag, just a little too much drag. There. There it spins, but it has a little drag and it doesn't wobble. So that's done. I take a 12-inch, do the same thing. One washer on the outside, put it through the clean side, that's the outside. Put this on the inside for a spacer. Do the same thing. Okay, I have finished putting the four wheels on. Everything's in place. I will fill flip it upside down. And there you have the finished carriage. In this situation, I assembled it unfinished. You can use it this way. If you do use it unfinished, do not leave it out in the weather. The MDF especially will draw moisture. It won't hurt it if it gets wet like a little bit, but you don't want to leave it out in the moisture for any length of time. If you're going to paint it, make sure to paint it before you assemble it. Because as you can see, imagine trying to paint this after this is together, the insides of the wheels, and it's going to really be difficult to do a good job once it's assembled. So if you're going to paint it, once it comes out of the box, do all the priming and top coating first. Let it dry good, and then do this final assembly. And that should work out real well for you. Thank you. Appreciate your purchase. I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, you can reach me at the phone number which I'm showing here. Bye-bye.